So let's go on to China. It's and the pain trade. And if you'd like to introduce that there, Daniel, on what you got for us.
Yeah, so this week the People's Bank of China, they cut interest rates, they cut reserve requirements. They're
Oh,
looking
no.
to reduce mortgage rates, relax second home buying rules, and this is all really in hopes to get China back to a 5% GDP growth because, as you know, we've talked about on the show earlier in the year, their stock market has been down for a while. They've been in a bit of, I don't want to say a housing crisis, but a real estate bubble where everybody essentially owned real estate as investment properties. But, we've all heard of the ghost towns in China. So they essentially owned real estate that no one was ever going to live in because there was more housing than there were people, which is crazy because China already has like 1.2 billion people. And it's really, one, hurt their economy, and two, kind of, from what we can see externally, even the people are pretty upset with how things are going on the inside. And this was the kind of the final thing they did where we've actually seen at least for now, a little pump in their stock market, at least.
Wow.
Yeah, China is housing and real estate. That's their economy, and ours is credit. So that's what they talk about. What were you going to say, Royce?
Well, I remember when we did the same thing with our banks. Basically, I'm not sure if you guys know how, or I'm sure you guys know how reserve banking works, but maybe our listeners don't realize how reserve banking works, right? So typically, if you go deposit $100 into a bank, the bank was previously required until November, I would think it was 2022, to have at least $10 on hand to give you if there was a run on the bank. They removed that. They're not required to give you anything. So you put $100 in the bank, you come back and say, give me money. They're like, we don't have any. That's what's currently in place for us. So the fact that now China is also lowering their reserves for what their banks are required to hold on hand, it does two things. When they did that, we saw a nice continuation of the bull market because that literally gave the banks 10% more money that they could pump into other markets to keep the markets afloat. So that's why it's going to stimulate, or it should stimulate, China's market. But at the same time, that's very, very dangerous. You have to do something with your interest rate to basically make sure that you still have that 10% somewhere else, even if you're not giving it back to the people who originally deposited. So it's kind of scary. I do not like hearing when they keep lowering the reserves that countries or companies or whoever has to basically, governments, that's the word I'm looking for. That governments have to have on hand in order to basically serve their people. Removing that limit basically makes it the Old West.